Good evening. Welcome to the City of Cranston's regularly scheduled February full City Council meeting. Tonight is Monday, February 26th. At this time, I'd ask the clerk to please take attendance. Thank you.
Councilman Ferry,
Present.
Councilwoman Marzulli,
Present.
Councilwoman Jermaine, Councilman Donegan,
Present.
Councilman Campopiano,
Present.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Present.
Councilman Wall,
Here.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Present.
Council President Marino.
Present. And at this time, if you'll please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, we have approval of minutes. I'll entertain a motion relative to the approval of the minutes from the January 2024 regular council meeting.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Marzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campopiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas.
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Next this evening, we will have public comment. At this time, we ask that members of the public in chambers and online, if they wish to be heard on any docketed matters, if they could please keep their comments limited to 4 minutes in consideration of others and state your name and address for the record. Right now, we will start with in chambers, if there's anyone that wishes to be heard on any docketed matters.
Good evening. Amin Nakat, 19 Hillside Avenue, President of Local 1363. I'd just like to get up today and talk about Chief Bobby Ryan. I've personally worked with him over the last 29 years. He's been a great leader in all of the roles that he's served as far as being officers of all the trucks. And I think he's an excellent choice to lead the city of Cranston and the fire department forward. And the men and women, I think he's going to be a great choice. Thanks.
Good evening, Robert Murray, 21 Garden City Drive in Cranston. I'm here tonight to speak on ordinance number 01-2402 relating to business licenses for short-term lenders. I apologize. I did come to the Safety Services meeting. It was actually on the phone with Mr. Angel outside, and I walked in just a couple of minutes late, and I wasn't able to speak that night, so I do apologize. But I just want to speak quickly on a couple of points. First, I know this ordinance follows a similar ordinance in the city of Woonsocket. In all honesty, I think that ordinance has some challenges, and by following it, I think the city begins to go down the same path. Basically, my argument is that this ordinance would violate state law, and it exceeds the council's authority that you may think you have to regulate such businesses. Our Supreme Court has said on many occasions that the power to regulate businesses through licensing is an attribute of sovereignty and may be exercised by a municipality only upon an express or implied delegation of power from the state. In short, Cranston can only exercise such licensing powers as are properly granted by the General Assembly. In following the Woonsocket ordinance, I would note that a critical acknowledgement in that statute was deleted from Cranston's relating to what I would call a severability clause, which states that the ordinance may be in conflict with state law, and if so, that language would be struck. The legislature retains power to act on issues of state concern, and the power of home rule is subordinate to the General Assembly's unconditional power to legislate in the same areas. Therefore, licensing is not a local matter, and the General Assembly retains exclusive jurisdiction over licensing Rhode Island businesses unless they delegate it to a city or town like Cranston. Absent that, I believe you are without jurisdiction to license any type of businesses, including the ones proposed here tonight. In all honesty, the ordinance is a bit of a word salad of statutes from language relating to small loan lenders in Title 19, Chapter 14.2, and check cashing in Title 19, Chapter 14.4. With specific provisions, and I won't speak long. Line 67 requires a copy of a current state consumer short-term lender license under Rhode Island General Law 19-14.4.1, which is the check cashing statute for businesses that are exempt from licensing. So your ordinance refers to a state short-term lender license. It repeats that again in line 140. Line 97 cites that no fee can be charged more than 10% of the amount of the loan pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 19.14.4 subsection 4. And that's a statute that has to do with check cashing and deferred deposit transaction fees. This ordinance, as proposed, does not define what a fee is. I asked, does it include interest, application fees, or points? Unlike the Woonsocket ordinance at line 107, you attempt to limit that there will be no more than 4 such businesses in the city. That is a direct interference, in my opinion, with the Commerce Clause. You set forth no rationale or criteria for such a limitation. How do you decide where they can go? Who gets them? My question would be, we don't limit auto repair businesses. We don't limit bowling alley licenses or flower vendors. I just don't think there's a rational basis in the ordinance for such a limitation. Just a few more sections. Section 5.577, starting at line 127, speaks of suspending or revocation of a license. It gives the city clerk the power to deny issuance or renewal of a license without any hearing or notice provisions. If an applicant is found guilty of an overnight parking or minimum housing violation, or even a speeding ticket, their license can be denied. I'm not sure that's intended process through this ordinance. At line 151, it also gives the city council authority to suspend or revoke a license without any due process rights to the license holder. Finally, section 5.578 on violations and penalties states no specific range of fine that could be imposed. I think there's some language missing in line 159 that I'd encourage you to look at. There seems to be some words missing. My bottom line is, respectfully, while I understand the good intent of the sponsors, I think the ordinance should be paused or frankly rejected. But I think your licensing authority needs to be more clearly determined before enactment of such an ordinance. Thank you.
There being no one else in chambers, Tom, is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to be heard?
Through the chair, if I can just give a reminder to the public, please use the raise hand function or dial *9 if on a phone. There is no public comment.
Public comment is now closed on docketed matters. Next this evening, I would ask for a motion to take the agenda out of order. The tax assessor this evening has other engagements and would like to hear him earlier on in the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campopiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Okay. At this time, we will go to page 4, report of city officers. At this time, we would ask the tax assessor, Kenneth Millette, to do his presentation this evening. Thank you.
Good evening, councilors. Thank you for this opportunity. Being involved in as many reevaluations that I have throughout the state, I find it very helpful if I come before this body or any town council or city council that I've worked in to present to them kind of an overview of what has happened over the past year. We're expecting to mail out valuation notices within the next 2 weeks, and I am sure your phones will ring when people get their valuation notice. I want to outline today what our policies and our procedures will be going forward and give you some examples of what's going on in the city. Just a quick notation as far as I'm concerned. Something I wanted to express to you is Cranston's median sale price and what those have done since 2020 compared to 2023. Single-family homes in 2020 were valued at $285,000. That was the median sale value. 2023, single-family homes, $406,500. Condominiums, 2020, $220,000. In 2023, $299,900. Two-family homes, in 2020, $313,750, and in 2023, $406,000. So based on that, I am sure you will get many, many questions. I'm here tonight, I will take questions at the end of my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions, including questions from the public. I will not talk about specific properties because we are still in the finalization of values. No values are set yet. We're in the process. So I'd like to just explain to you some of the processes we go through. I'm going to show you some examples, residential examples. I want to hit on upcoming events and also some key items that I think you need to know. So in a full reevaluation process, we go out and we do a full, what they call measure and list. We look at all properties. We measure every property. If there is access to all sides of the property, we will measure. If there were locked gates, we were not going into locked properties. We do a physical inspection, if possible, on all sales. That physical inspection of all sales was done by my office. I have a licensed appraiser on staff, so we do that physical inspection of sales in-house. It helps to reduce the cost of the reval, so that's something we do. We also took care of doing all open building permits, both commercial and residential, again, in the efforts of trying to keep that price tag a little bit lower than it can be. Then our next step is we rebuild all of the market models. We look at the new cost tables, developing new cost tables, new market tables, new income tables for commercial properties. We review all of the resulting valuations, and then we perform what we call logical edits. Our sales analysis, we primarily looked at what has occurred in the city of Cranston from January 1st of 23 to December 31st of 23. We placed most weight of that review on what happened in the latter half of the year. Values are not based on percentage increases or decreases. You will not hear me talk about percentages ever. I don't talk to the taxpayers about it. I don't talk to the press about it, and I won't talk to you about it because it's an unfair scale to be compared to, because they, in a reevaluation process, it kind of is a bell curve. Some properties stay the same, properties go up, and some properties go down. So on a bell curve, most of the properties are going up in value. We then look at the units of comparison, the rates per square foot, the rates per unit, and the rates per acre. In the valuation process, our units of comparison are developed by the local real estate market. That's called market development. Models are tested against recent sales, and all of those results must conform to industry standards, those developed by the International Association of Assessing Offices. Step one of our model examples is we take living area and we multiply that by the rate per square foot. We make adjustments for such things as the style of the home, the size of the home, the number of stories, exterior wall types, cathedral areas. Then we move on to the next step, which is basement adjustments for those that have partial basements or no basements. We adjust for any finished basement if there is one, dependent upon quality. The low-quality basement is not the same as a full worked-out basement with a full walkout. We adjust for any storage or expansion attics. We then move on to for heating types. We adjust for central air conditioning. And yes, we do adjust for mini splits. We had that this year because it's so prevalent in the market right now. If you look at MLS, multiple listing service, many properties are being advertised as full central air, which they are not. They're mini splits. So we have developed a model for that. So we would not compare mini split house to a house that has central air. We will adjust for the number of bathrooms. We then adjust for the extra plumbing fixtures, as in wet bars and in-law kitchens. Step 5, we adjust for non-living areas, garages, porches, decks. Then we adjust for other building features, basement garages, fireplaces, unfinished and unheated areas. Adjustments are made to be either positive or negative depending on the property. We apply a desirability index, which looks at the quality of construction, market desirability, functionality of layout and design, conformance of surrounding properties, and curb appeal. Then we go on to look at the depreciation, the age, the condition, the wear and tear, any functional issues. We look at economic issues such as brownfields. Is the property up against the brownfield? Is it up against a quarry? We have that here in Cranston. Then we do our land valuation. Units of measure are from the market. The home site is typically a flat rate based on the location. We adjust, then apply an adjustment for any undersized or oversized lots. If there's additional buffer land, we look at acre pricing and the non-developmental potential of the property. Then we look at site improvements. Are they detached garages? Are there in-ground pools or above-ground pools, sheds, barns, and other structures? The value of those is again based on the quality, the size, and the age. Then we move on to logical edits. After the value generation, logical edits are performed to identify potential errors. Yes, we look for highs and lows, making sure that we're within the parameters that are set. We provide a list of the new parcels and any deleted parcels to the reevaluation company, so we make sure we don't double bill. Next, I'm going to give you 4 examples of properties. When I look for examples of properties, especially when I'm trying to figure out if the reevaluation is on the money or not, we look for sales in the last reval and sales in this reval. How did they assess at those times, and how does the new assessment look? So the first property I'm going to have you look at, this property sold in December of 2020 for $776,000. It was assessed in 2020 for $828,600. There were some minor adjustments made to that property through building permits. It sold again in June of 23 for $1,181,500. Our new assessment as of 12/31/23, based on the market, is looking at it's going to be somewhere around $1,231,300. The next property I want you to look at. As you can see, I don't talk about percentages again, and I don't give you an address because it would be unfair for me to point out somebody's property, but at least a picture can tell you 1,000 words. This property sold in June of 2020 for $410,000. It was assessed in 2020 for $417,800. Property was sold again in 2023, October for $575,000, and the assessment we're expecting to be somewhere around $589,600. Next property is 2 properties I'm going to look at are multifamily properties. The first one is a 2-family property that sold in December of 2020 for $204,000. The assessment came in at $2,037,000. It sold again in September of 2023 for $375,000, and we're expecting the December 2023 assessment to be $381,900. The next property is another two-family property. It sold in April of 2020 for $320,000. It was assessed with 246.3. In this case, the modeling dictated that 246.3. We've emphasized the market, but modeling plays a role in this too. It sold again in April of this year for $455,000, and we expect it to be assessed at $380,500. Those assessments are within the allowable exception area for that we base our revals on. On commercial properties, we do an income analysis. We only do this on commercial properties. We look at the income expense forms that we mailed out to income producing properties. Those returns to our office are confidential. And in Rhode Island, it's a voluntary compliance. These are considered only when sufficient data is available. No business income is considered, only the real estate. That being said, we're going to move on to what's going to be happening in the next few weeks. We're expecting valuation notices to be mailed to all residents and commercial properties March 11th to March 15th. Informal hearings conducted by the Reval Company will be done between March 21st and April 19th. There will be telephone hearings and in-person hearings. Due to COVID, we've noticed that most taxpayers do not want to come in, but they will do a telephone interview. Final value turnover to the city. My office will be on April 30th. We will certify the tax roll following the city council vote on the budget. The tax roll will go to the vendor in June, as it does always. Valuation notices that will be mailed will contain the following information. They will have the proposed new assessment as of 12/31/23. They will contain property characteristics. Taxpayers will ask to review their information online and notify Vision Government Solutions of any discrepancies. Information to schedule an informal review meeting. You contact Vision Government Solutions. Their web address is vgsi.com, and there's a special section on there to schedule a hearing. Taxpayers are urged to compare their assessments with other properties in the neighborhood. And believe me, they can answer most of their own questions just by looking at what's going to be available online. We are going to, as part of our GIS platform, be releasing a sales map, which will show all sales that occurred in 22 and all sales that occurred in 23 geographically mapped. So when a taxpayer wants to know, hey, my next door neighbor's house sold, what did it sell for? Well, it's an interactive map. All they have to do is click on that particular property, and it's highlighted, and it will tell you exactly what it sold for. Informal review meetings. The data is hosted on the Vision Government's website. Property owners are asked to state what they feel is wrong with the property and what's wrong with their value. A Vision rep will listen and consider the property owner's concerns. Vision will document the issues raised, and they will perform additional research if necessary. Vision will look for a pattern of complaints. They will also make any necessary corrections. And after that process, they will send decision notices to all taxpayers who ask for an informal meeting. If the taxpayer is not satisfied at that point, they will be billed on the value that Vision has provided, but they can then enter into the formal review process, and that process is laid out in state law. First appeal is to the assessor within 90 days of the first payment's due date. Forms will be available on the tax assessor's website and through the tax assessor's office. If a taxpayer calls and says, I don't have a computer, we will mail them. The tax assessor will mail his decisions based on the information submitted with an appeal within 45 days. Taxpayers may file with the tax board of review within 30 days of the assessor's decision. The tax board of review will notify the taxpayer of the hearing date and time. The file from the assessor's appeal will be forwarded to the tax board of review, along with any new evidence submitted with the appeal. Taxpayers will be notified by the tax board of review in writing and will have 30 days to file in Superior Court if they still not feel satisfied with that decision. Key items that I wanted to talk about is property reevaluations do not raise additional revenue for municipality. The tax levy cap for Rhode Island predetermines the amount of revenue that can be raised through the property tax. Revenue is not impacted by that reevaluation. The main goal of a reevaluation project is to equitably distribute the tax burden, not to raise taxes. I thank you for your time, and I will take questions at this moment.
Thank you, Mr. Millet, for that thorough explanation as to the reevaluation process that's mandated by the state. And I'm sure that we will all be getting those phone calls and emails, so this will be of assistance. Do any council members have any questions or comments relative to the reevaluation and the presentation this evening? Okay. No? Councilman Donegan.
Just, thank you. This was very informative. Letters and information, is it sent out in Spanish and other languages other than English for?
It is available. If it's requested, we can do it in other languages. We typically send everything out in English. But if there's an issue, we can send out a translation copy for them. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Millet.
Thank you.
Now going back to page 2 on the agenda, we have resolutions this evening. We have a resolution recognizing February as Children's Dental Health Month, sponsored by Councilwoman Renzulli, Councilman Paplaskas, and Councilman Campopiano. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
To the sponsors.
Thank you, Council President. As many of you may know, February is Children's Dental Health Month across the country. The legislature also sponsors resolutions saying as such, and the mayor of Cranston just signed a proclamation that matches this resolution. In Cranston, starting in March, Dr. Shanoy, a periodontist with Rhode Island Periodontics, will be working with the Cranston Public School Department to visit each school, giving free dental health screenings. And it is really important that we encourage kids and families to be getting these dental health screenings, because we know that oral health affects our entire body. And it's important that we start children when they're young. I could see in my own children the effects that it had over COVID, not being able to go to the dentist. So it's very important that in addition to the Molar Express that's operated by CCAP, that we now have this partnership with the Rhode Island Dental Association. And additionally, in January, Senator Gallo and Representative McNamara sponsored a bill that was seeking to increase transparency in dental insurance, which if passed would require insurers to spend at least 85% of their customers' premiums on patient care or refund the difference. And they believe that this should encourage more people to get the dental care that they need. Additionally, we hope that more people will get into the dental field, because in Rhode Island, the average dentist is 62 years old, and we're suffering from a severe shortage similar to primary care. So if anyone would like to join in on this, sponsoring this resolution, I do think it's very important that we recognize children's dental health and encourage parents and schools and communities to be talking about this. Thank you.
Councilman Wall.
Yeah, please add me as a co-sponsor.
Councilman Donegan. Okay, all right. And if I could be added as a co-sponsor as well. Any other discussion? Councilman Ferry?
All in.
Okay. Council Vice President Vargas as well. Okay, thank you. All right. At this time, if clerk, if you could please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campopiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Next, we have reports of committees. We'll start with the Claims Committee in Councilwoman Germain's absence as the chair. I'll just report that there is nothing to report out of committee as there were no votes taken at that time. Next up this evening, we have Safety Services. So Councilman Ferry.
Thank you. We had a rather lengthy Safety Services meeting on February 5th, 2024, due to the fact that we had close to 40 businesses that had not renewed their licenses. The clerk's office has been working diligently to try and get these matters in order. I had the clerk's office email everyone the list of remaining businesses that still have not complied. And we are urging the solicitor's office to continue its persistence to get these businesses to comply to the fact that some are still perhaps operating without their licenses. So that's my update. And I want to thank the clerk's office for working so diligently on this. Thank you.
And Councilman Ferry, as Chair of Safety Services and Licenses, you have additional items to report?
Yes, we do. Okay. We have two ordinances before us tonight. I actually attended the Rhode Island Coalition for Payday Reform meeting today to make sure that I was prepared to present this to you. We have two ordinances before us. One would be for a license to issue short-term loans, and the other ordinance is to restrict how much money these businesses can charge people. So let's be blunt about this. This is called predatory lending. 15 years ago, my brother and I had an employee that came to us and said he was in desperate need of borrowing $2,000 because he owed a payday lender $2,000. And my brother, who was a state rep at the time, said, how in the world could you owe a payday lender $2,000? They only loaned you $500. And after thorough investigation, it turned out to be that these fees can be the type of fees that a person can practically never pay off. And they can be as high as 260% APR. So for 13 years, lobbyists have been standing at the State House telling state reps and senators that there's no need to regulate this business. Yet people have been preyed upon, and it's always the most vulnerable. Tonight we have a chance to make a difference. One of the reasons why we ran for office, to help the people that are most vulnerable. These institutions are nothing but predatory lending institutions, and they are out to get the money from the people that they lend the $500 to. I don't know if that ordinance is perfect. It passed in Woonsocket last month. It passed in the ordinance committee in Providence 2 weeks ago. It's being presented in Warwick and some other cities too. I just don't have the list with me. And we did have this come out of the Safety Services Committee on February 5th. So to explain exactly what they do is they give a loan to someone for $500 and there's a fee attached to that loan. And if they don't pay the loan off in 2 weeks, sometimes it's 13 days, I don't know why, they add another fee onto the loan. And that just keeps driving up the rate, and the person makes the minimum payment and the fee is actually more than the minimum payment, and it just escalates into something that the person is never able to pay off. This ordinance restricts the amount of interest the person can be charged to APR. And it caps it out at 36%. That's how the ordinance is written. It doesn't allow the interest to travel to 260%. It's still a high APR. There's still profit to be made for the lender. There's still fees to be paid by the people borrowing the money. The money is still available to the people to borrow, but they just can't be preyed upon to be charged exorbitant amounts of money. So those are the two ordinances before us. One is to get the license to become a short-term lender, and the second is to regulate how much money they can charge the people that borrow the money. So I think we should do the right thing tonight, pass this ordinance, protect those that are most vulnerable, join Woonsocket and Providence, and show the state reps and the senators that the cities and towns are taking this upon themselves to protect their residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Berry. And just to be clear, so out of committee 124-02 ordinance and 1-24-03 ordinance, sister ordinances, both passed out of committee, correct?
That is correct.
And I'll ask for a motion relative to the first ordinance 124-02.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And any discussion?
There is a Scribner's error that needs to be corrected on 12402.
Okay.
Clerk, did you know the exact? It's just one of the numbers needs to be changed.
Actually, it's, so the numbering starts at 5.571 for definitions. It goes to 5.572, 5.573, and then the remaining sections. The other 5 is omitted, so they jump to 5.74. It should be 5.574. 5.75 should be 5.575. 5.76 should be 5.576. 5.77 should be 5.577, and 5.78 should be 5.578.
Thank you. And at this time, we'll hear from Attorney Angel.
So just a couple of other recommended floor amendments. At line 68, where it quotes the Rhode Island general laws, it should not be 19-14.4-1. It should be -2 small d in parens. So that it would read 19-14.4-2d, small d in parens. The other item of note is on line 159. After where it says of this license under the provisions of, the words this article of the should be deleted. It should simply say of the Code of Ordinances. Did you get that, Tracy? Those would be my recommended floor amendments. They're Scribner's, they're minor. I did hear some other comments this evening that I think are worth addressing from a legal standpoint. Woonsocket's not exactly the leader in the pack here. This ordinance was proposed by a couple of groups. Woonsocket picked up the ball and ran first. Other communities are Pawtucket, Warwick, Providence, and Coventry. Coventry passed theirs. Woonsocket passed theirs. Providence will pass theirs. And I'm told that the other two will get passage as well. Just to be clear, Rhode Island general laws are very clear as to, in the particular section, Title 19, Chapter 14.4 and its progeny, payday lenders have a special carve-out in the Rhode Island general laws. And I'm not going to get into all the peculiarities of it, but when you talk about annual percentage rates, a lot of times fees are rolled into that. And where the real problem is with these loans is the so-called rollover fee. The rollover fee is spoken for in 19-14.4-4, 4 in parens. It's the rollover fee. You know, if we've all seen these movies on television, right? Where you borrow money from some guy in see-through socks, and if you don't pay him back, they tack it on to the loan, right? It's called the VIG. Well, that's what this is. That's all this is, in plain English. It's a fee that's tacked on because they couldn't make the payment within the prescribed time period, and it just rolls and rolls and rolls. This ordinance limits that. Are we prohibited from doing so under the statutes? I don't believe so. The general laws have delegated authority to make regulations in this area for payday lenders to the Department of Business Regulations. And they do so in Title 230, Chapter 40, Subchapter 20, Money Services. Okay, I've looked at that. You know what that does? It protects the payday lenders. They have to have bulletproof glass. Doesn't protect the consumer. There's not a blessed thing in here that protects the consumer. There's no avenue of redress. So from a policy standpoint, you're not prohibited from addressing this. And at some point, if you are, great. We'll have other cities and towns to go fight with us to make sure that this is regulated. This is the will of the sponsors of this legislation. I'm not here to speak to that. But as far as, there's a prohibition somewhere of us from regulating this business, that's just simply not the case. And as to the comment that you're limiting the number, I didn't put an arbitrary number in here. I was asked to put that number here. This legislature can choose how many check cashing businesses you have in your city. With that said, why would you restrain somebody's trade? Well, we restrain liquor stores. We restrain liquor licenses, right? You can only have so many of those in a city or town. You have to vote to go over the cap. You can vote to go over the cap if you want, okay? But there's an established cap here. That's up to you. You're the legislature. You are the local legislature. Unless the General Assembly tells you you can't regulate in this area, and they have not told you that you can't regulate in this area. What the law has said is that they maintain jurisdiction over federally and state chartered financial institutions, and with respect to those financial institutions. Doesn't say anything about payday lenders other than making sure that they put up their bulletproof glass and whatever else benefits the payday lender. There's nothing in those regulations that talks about consumer protection. So those would be my proposed changes, Madam President, and before the bill goes forward. If it does go forward, I'd ask that the council consider those.
Thank you, Attorney Angel. Before we have further discussion, I would like to perhaps entertain a motion to withdraw the motion to approve and substitute with the appropriate motion to amend.
I believe I made the motion to approve. I will withdraw my motion to approve and will make a motion to amend as prescribed by the city council attorney.
Second.
Right. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campopiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas, Council President Marino.
Yes. And now entertain a motion to approve the ordinance as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilman Donegan.
Thank you, Council President. I want to thank Councilman Ferry for your leadership on this. You're the one that brought this to my attention. I know how much work you put into this. And like you said, this is a step that we can take this evening as the legislative body in our city to help people. And this legislation will help people. It will protect people from predatory loans that take advantage of people, everyone, especially people living paycheck to paycheck. So this is something that we can do that will have a real tangible impact on people's lives to improve their lives here in Cranston. And I hope that we don't let this opportunity slip. So thank you. And I urge this council to pass this evening.
Councilman Wall.
I don't know if I could say it better. I concur with my colleague, and I'd also like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Renzulli.
Thank you, Madam President. I just had a question for Solicitor Verdecchia or Council Attorney Angel, or maybe it's for Council Attorney Angel if he wrote this. I'm just wondering, Councilman Ferry had mentioned the 36% APR, which I know is standard for military families nationally. I can't find that in the ordinance. I do see a charge fee of no more than 10%, which I asked about last time, if that included interest or if it was just a fee. So I'm just wondering if it's 36% APR and 10% in fees, or if it's 10% overall, or if someone could just direct me to where it is.
It's the cumulative effect of the fees that are being capped, and the fees are driven by the rollover provision that's allowed in the statute. This council's capping that in this legislation.
And that will equate to 36% APR? Thank you. And then my other question was, in the Woonsocket legislation, I believe they have a severability clause. Should we add that to be safe in any kind of way, or no, by the solicitor or Attorney Angel, or both?
I'll say that I don't think it matters. When I saw the ordinance, I took it out. I don't think it matters. The ordinance goes up or down on its merits. It's not a piecemeal ordinance. There's no way to disconnect one part of this ordinance from the other and still accomplish its intent.
Attorney Verdecchia, do you agree with that statement? I just want to.
I defer to Attorney Angel. After hearing his presentation, obviously he's engaged in quite a bit of analysis in comparing the state statutes to this ordinance. And that language, the savings clause language, is sometimes employed in statutes. But I'm going to defer to his judgment in this matter. He has obviously reviewed this in much more detail than I have. And I think when he says that it either rises and falls in its entirety, I think that's a reasonable position to take.
Thank you, Attorney Verdecchia. Attorney Angel, if we pass this and the opinion that we are out of our purview, if it comes up with how would that happen? Could this affect the city? Could this business take this to Superior Court, or no?
I'm sure Attorney Verdecchia would agree with me. I don't intend to give a roadmap to a payday lender as to what they may do to disable the statute or take the city to court. I don't think that's prudent to have that discussion in public, but I'm happy to have it with the council in private or to provide a private opinion.
Thank you.
Councilman Campopiano.
Thank you, Council President. I know I believe there's one payday lender in the city of Cranston. How would this affect them going forward? I don't know if Attorney Angel can answer that. Do they have to reapply for a license?
They'd have to come into compliance with the ordinance. It shouldn't be a big deal for them. I assume they're already licensed by the state. It shouldn't be a big deal for them. They would just have to apply for the license with the city, and they'd have to comply with the terms of it going forward. Because I assume my recollection is this is effective upon passage, unless the council decides to pick a date on which it's going to be effective other than its date of passage. So
They're not grandfathered in?
They would have to commit to compliance.
Are they not grandfathered in? They have to just come in?
They have to commit to compliance.
Thank you.
Councilman Paplaskas.
Thank you. Obviously, I support, do not support predatory lending. But I do have some concerns with this. This is a word salad, as Attorney Murray said. I remember when Councilmember Donegan tried to regulate third-party delivery services, and the lobbyists came here quicker than I've ever seen before to fight against it. There's no lobbyists here coming up to speak against it. So in the back of my mind, I feel like another shoe is going to drop. And I think of the enabling state legislation that Attorney Murray had brought up. And we're blessed with all these attorneys today. So I'll ask Attorney Verdecchia, because I like to put him on the hot seat. Do you think that we need state enabling legislation for this? I know Solicitor Angel eloquently answered it, but I'd like to hear from everybody since you're here.
Well, as a general principle, I think we would all agree that in the area of licensing, licensing is a state function. And the various municipalities, the towns and cities, can only issue such licenses as they are authorized to issue by the sovereign, which is the state. And over the course of the meetings we've had, the ordinances we've enacted, we've seen some of the examples of where the state has delegated to the towns and cities what they can license and what they cannot. Now, what I found interesting, and I compliment Steve, I myself, when this was in front of committee, my concern was that there wasn't any specific enabling legislation that I saw, but that was a very cursory review that I had done at that time. But apparently, and again, this is where I defer to Steve. I have not undertaken this this investigation myself, but apparently DBR, Department of Business Regulation, does contain a grant, if you want to call it that, of authority to the municipalities. I have absolutely no reason to question what Steve researched. And DBR, as you know, is a department commission board of the state of Rhode Island. So what's interesting is the United States Supreme Court, I think, as we speak, is taking up, and this is going to be a huge issue that's going to affect every state in the country and every town and city. They're going to determine how much can be delegated by legislatures to boards, commissions, and things of that nature. And ultimately, that's going to have an effect on, as I said, every state in the country. So this is a very complex area. And the highest court in the country is going to take up that issue. But having said all of that, again, I defer to Attorney Angel if there is some type of delegation in the rules and the provisions of the Department of Regulation. I feel comfortable that the city would have that authority. And as he said, it appears that this is something that the at least 4 or 5 cities and towns are kind of circling the wagons on. So it's not like Cranston's an outlier here. So if this does become an issue, I think, you know, we would probably put up a united front with other towns and cities, and then it would be up to the court to decide. Nothing is certain. You know, these are our opinions, as you know. These are our legal opinions. And no one is claiming that, you know, they're infallible. Sometimes, truthfully, these things have to be tested. And again, the highest court in the country is taking up not this exact issue, but very similar to it. So there's still a little bit of uncertainty out there, but I'm comfortable with his analysis.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Anyone else wish to be heard who hasn't already been heard this evening? No. Councilwoman Renzulli?
Thank you. And seeing the attorneys in agreement on this, I feel comfortable with it now. I hope that the legislature eliminates payday lending altogether, but I think this is a small step. And if we can unite with other cities and towns, and we do not need the state enabling legislation, then I will be in support of this tonight. And if acceptable, I would like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you. I would just like to say, now that everyone has been heard, I want to thank Councilman Ferry for bringing forth this ordinance, for looking out for the average person and trying to limit as best we can within our authority the negative impact of predatory lending on individuals. And I appreciate the hard work that you put into this. Okay. At this time, clerk, if you can please take a roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campopiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Okay. Next this evening, we have the sister ordinance 124-03. I'd ask for a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay. Once again, I'd just like to thank Councilman Ferry for his work relative to this sister ordinance. And at this time, clerk, if you can please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campopiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Yep. Next this evening, we'll have Councilman Donegan as reporting as the chair of the Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you, Council President. First, I want to just quickly thank my colleagues and the council on February 5th. I was unable to be in attendance that evening due to a family matter with the little guy. So I appreciate all of you chairing the meeting, Council President, and taking up the business. With that said, there are several items that came out of committee for us to entertain this evening. The first being the consideration of tax interest waiver approvals for the month of January 2024 as requested by the city treasurer. This came out of committee and I would move passage.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campopiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes.
Next, we have a resolution authorizing motor vehicle abatements as recommended by the tax assessor. This moved out of committee. I would urge passage this evening.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campopiano.
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes.
We have a resolution authorizing real estate tax abatements as recommended by the tax assessor. I would move I would move passage this evening.
Motion to approve?
Second.
At this time, Councilman Donegan, defer to the clerk. I think that you had stated the same one twice. Did you do motor vehicle twice?
No, you said real
Real
estate for
estate
both.
choice.
This one is actually for motor vehicle.
I stand corrected. Sorry, looking at the,
Withdraw my motion.
Withdraw my second.
resolution authorizing motor vehicle abatements as recommended by the tax assessor.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Thank you again to the clerk. I thought it was my hearings. Please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Yes.
Councilman Donegan.
Yes.
Councilman Campopiano.
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas.
Yes.
Councilman Wall.
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas.
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes.
And last but not least, we have advice and consent on Mayor Hopkins' appointment of Robert Ryan as fire chief. This came out of committee and I would move passage this evening.
Motion to approve?
Second. And at this time, if the administration would like to be heard, and then I see that Chief Ryan is here as well. If I understand he'd like to be heard this evening as well. Would we like to hear from the administration first or Chief Ryan? It's whatever your pleasure. Absolutely.
Good evening, Director Moretti, Council President Moreno, honorable members of the Cranston City Council. I stand here tonight before you, both humbled and honored by the mayor's nomination for chief of the Cranston Fire Department. I am Deputy Chief Robert Ryan. I've been acting chief for the last 2 months. and I am deeply grateful for the consideration of this pivotal role. For the past 36 years, I've dedicated my career to the Cranston Fire Department, serving the community with unwavering commitment and passion throughout my tenure. I have witnessed the department evolve, adapting new challenges, embracing opportunities to better serve the residents of the city of Cranston. My journey has been marked with continuous learning, collaboration, and unwavering commitment to excellence in emergency services. As I seek your support to lead this esteemed department, I want to assure you that my dedication to the city safety well-being remains steadfast. The fire department is not just a response team, it's a vital part of the community. It stays symbol and trust and reliability. Under my leadership, we will continue to uphold these values while striving innovation and improvement. I am pleased to announce the approval of a new class of 18 recruits to start this spring. This step signifies not just growth for the department, but also commitment preparing for the future. With fresh energy and perspectives, along with wisdom and experience to the current team, the future of Cranston Fire Department is indeed brighter than ever. In closing, I wish to express my deepest appreciation for this consideration and have granted the honor of serving as your fire chief. I pledge to dedicate every ounce of experience, skills, and passion to ensure the safety and well-being for every resident in the city of Cranston. Thank you for this opportunity to serve.
Thank you. Director Moretti?
Thank you, Council President. It's a good day. I have the opportunity to come here and present the mayor's recommendation for advice and consent to this body and Acting Chief Robert Ryan. He mentioned 36 years of service. Back in 1988, I believe, he was came on the department as a private lieutenant in 2026, captain in 2013, and deputy chief in 2019, and then assumed the role of acting chief after Chief Warren very late 2023. I could tell you in 2 months, the chief has woken me up with telephone calls 5 times in 60 days. That might be a record. But the chief is a Cranston guy, born and raised here, attended Cranston High School East. I guess the best way that I could describe him from my experiences with him is he's a firefighter's firefighter. He knows the city. He knows our residents. Obviously, you could tell us by his demeanor. He's a humble person, conscientious, thoughtful, and this unswerving dedication to the Cranston Fire Department, the people that he leads, and the residents of the city of Cranston. With that, the mayor urges you, and it's my honor, to present Chief Ryan for your approval. And with that, we hope you can join us, if you approve him, tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock at Cranston East for his formal swearing in ceremony. And for the entire public, they're certainly welcome to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Moretti. As I stated at the Finance Committee meeting relative to this appointment, that I am both grateful and appreciative of your willingness to serve in this role. Your dedication over the years is proven and tested, and your willingness to serve not only the brave men and women of your department, but the community overall speaks volumes about your integrity and your sacrifice. And along with that, I will say again, because I mean it wholeheartedly, is the sacrifice of your family as well in sacrificing your time round the clock relative to this position. And we wish you the best of luck. And as stated before, I'll say it again, we on the City Council are here to be your partner in any way, shape, or form that we can. Thank you very much. Any other council members wish to be heard? At this, Councilman Ferry.
I don't say this very often, but I'll have to agree with Director Moretti. We're lucky to have you. I don't think we could find we'd be hard pressed to find someone else who wants this job as badly as you want it. And it'll do the job that you're gonna do, that you're already doing. I know, I've talked to you. And he has embraced his position already, and we are lucky to have him. I consider you a friend, and congratulations.
At this time, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan.
Yes.
Councilman Campopiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Next up this evening, Council Vice President Vargas, if you can report the committees.
Thank you, Council President. There is nothing to report out of the Public Works Committee meeting. So I'll move on to the Ordinance Committee meeting that was held on February 15th. For 92305 of Title 17 zoning, Chapter 17.010 of the City of Cranston, 2000, entitled Industrial Uses. This is sponsored by Council President Marino, and it was amended 925 of last year and 111 of this year. It was referred out of Ordinance Committee on February 15th. And I urge passage again here on the.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion this evening? I want to thank the solicitors for their work as well with some of the amendments, and to the committee for the thorough review of this matter. And I'd just like to make note for the record that the Planning Commission did put forth its recommendation relative to this ordinance as well. At this time, clerk, if you can please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campopiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
No.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes.
Thank you. The next item is 1-2401, Ordinance Amendment of Title 10, Vehicle and Traffic, Chapter 32 of the Code of the City of Cranston, 2005, entitled Stopping, Standing, and Parking on Specific Streets, Stop Intersection at Plantation Drive, Elm Drive, and Magazine Street. This is sponsored by Mayor Kenneth Hopkins and Councilwoman Renzulli. It was referred out of the Ordinance Committee on February 14th. And I urge passage.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And we'll begin discussion with a report from the administration.
Thank you. At the committee meeting, I made clear that the administration believes this to be an imperfect ordinance. And what we mean by that is currently at that intersection, and it's the key thing to note, it's within feet of the new Garden City School, which is handling twice the capacity that it did previously, obviously with the merger of the schools. The administration has received complaints about, I'll say, speeding, but also the concern for the children. And we have discussed this with the traffic safety coordinator, and he wants to put forward, and the mayor wants to sponsor in the coming month or months, I'll say a more comprehensive a plan. Tentatively, he's coming up with the design of a mini roundabout at that intersection because it's quite wide over there. And thinks that may work, in which case it would, it would serve as traffic calming, certainly right in that area, and best serve the area. However, the mayor feels, and I believe Councilwoman Renzulli is a co-sponsor, can speak to it certainly, that there is an imminent traffic safety concern for the children of the school. So putting this ordinance forward would hope to prevent an incident between now and the time that a more permanent, I'll say a more permanent solution can be developed and presented to the city council. With that, we've also consulted with the police department and with Colonel Winquist and Major Catalano, who is here this evening, if through the chair, if he could also express his opinion on this subject matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Moretti. If Major Catalano, if you wish to be heard. Thank you.
So just briefly, this has been something that we've been dealing with since school started. Obviously, when Garden City was constructed, it absorbed Waterman School. They have 510 kids now in Garden City School. Obviously, the school's on the southeast corner of that intersection. It's not your normal intersection. It's not a little neighborhood with a regular 20, 30-foot wide street. What happens is, and I got to applaud the school department because they've been out there every day since school opened, and they're monitoring that because nobody knew what was going to happen once school opened with all the kids, the traffic pattern, where they were going to pick up the kids, who was going to drop them off, where were the buses going to drop the kids off. And quite frankly, we can't control all the parents, all right? Sometimes they want to pick their kid up, they tell them to meet them on another corner, who's in a rush, who's not. So we went out there in December and determined that the next step was to paint the crosswalks. Let's make the intersection vibrant, paint the crosswalks. I think I spoke to Councilman Wall at one point. We tried to redo that intersection to make it more visible. That didn't work. It's still, the neighbors were calling, we were getting complaints. We field a lot of calls to the police department based on this intersection. Specifically, I think someone came to the council meeting, maybe some neighbors a few months ago as well. So we, in consultation with the mayor's office, decided we would put a four-way stop up there. As Chief of Staff Moretti stated, it's not perfect, but it's temporary. And if the space permits, we can put a roundabout there. And as a calming measure, that should do the trick. Those are utilized specifically for this purpose. And we think that, right now, if it's left alone the way it is, that we're leaving ourselves open, knowing what we know based on our studies. We've had the school resources out there on numerous occasions, and they are the ones who submitted their recommendation as well. So we think that a four-way stop will be, if it's installed and approved temporarily until they can come up with a design to install this roundabout, if the space permits, it should work. Either way, one of these two measures will definitely slow the traffic down and get us to the desired result that the neighbors are looking for. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Major. With respect to this ordinance and this issue, I recall early at the start of the school year, I actually had reached out because a constituent had reached out relative to concerns about speeding in that area. And it was relayed to the constituent at that time that it would be observed over the course of those couple of months or so because school had just started. So I appreciate you keeping watch and the administration to see what the pattern was in conjunction with the school department, because the last thing we want to do is cause a different problem in the area by putting a certain traffic measure in place. This question is not for you, Major Catalano, but for the administration. While I'm inclined to be in support of putting a temporary measure because I appreciate and respect the recommendations in terms of from the police department, my past experience on council has been that when it comes to traffic-related ordinances, the traffic studies required from our engineer, Mr. Mulcahy, and those have always been given and we've allowed for additional time. I don't see one here. Do you have one this evening?
What is this? His recommendation is a roundabout. So he's not going to recommend the four-way stop. He's going to recommend the mini roundabout. So that is what his recommendation is. That's why we're mentioning, we're kind of hedging this as an interim measure. A thought I had, by the way, if it becomes an issue for the council in terms of issuing an ordinance and revoking it later on, I don't know, perhaps, but we like this to be a group effort here. I was just sitting there thinking the idea if we withdrew, I don't know what's better, maybe we would talk to the attorneys. perhaps the mayor could issue an executive order. I don't know about the legality of that, if the council didn't want to act on it respectfully. Due to the nature of of it being temporary. I'm just throwing that out there on the floor because I was just thinking about that sitting back there.
A couple of things that brings up, the requirement of the traffic engineer providing us with a report relative to a traffic ordinance is not dependent on whether or not it's favorable or unfavorable. It's just the fact that the report has to be completed and provided to us. It's not with respect to the favorability. Okay.
In fact, Attorney Verdecchia can certainly speak on his own behalf. It's technical, but Attorney Verdecchia pointed out at the meeting that the report the charter doesn't say if it's written or verbal as to what that report is. That issue did come up at committee.
If that's the case, then the solicitor can specifically state on the record that we would be in compliance without having a written traffic study or hearing directly from the traffic engineer. And that would alleviate the concern. Because again, this is just on past experience. We as a body and frankly, as a constituent, I know other councils have approved of ordinances, even though the traffic engineer had a different recommendation as to what that traffic measure would be. So I just want to make sure we're in compliance. That's it.
Yeah, this one, if my memory serves me correctly, I believe that the director at that time opined that I think he gave an opinion with regard to traffic, if my memory serves me correctly. It wasn't a written report. The charter does not state oral or written, that is true. He did give an opinion that, I don't recall exactly what his opinion was, but he did give an opinion and he did give it orally. You know, we're talking about a stop sign here, a four-way stop sign. The other issue to consider is, I don't know if this could be considered a legitimate emergency type situation. I mean, I've heard the word bandied about a little bit, but again, I would have to defer to what he said at that last meeting, and my memory doesn't completely serve me, but I thought he did render an opinion at that time. No, I meant the Public Works Director. I'm sorry if that wasn't clear. Justin, so I mean, in this situation, I'm comfortable that he did give an opinion with regard to that. It may not have been the most comprehensive opinion, but does it satisfy the basic requirement of the traffic study at its most fundamental level? I think it does. So, and as you noted, Madam President, whether it's favorable or unfavorable is irrelevant to your determination. The charter only requires that some type of input be given. And I think there was input given by the Director of Public Works.
And just to be clear, Solicitor Verdecchia, you think the input was given by the Director of Public Works, but not Mr. Mulcahy, the traffic engineer?
My recollection is this was the Director of Public Works. The traffic engineer, I don't believe he was here on that night. I'm not familiar with the internal workings of the Department of Public Works. Obviously, the director is the supervisor of the traffic engineer, if I'm correct in that. So it's a little bit of semantics, but I think that he clearly gave an opinion at the last meeting.
All right. Thanks for that clarification. Again, I just want to make sure that we're in compliance and that there's consistency. So the rule going forward is that a verbal assurance relative to the traffic impact from the Director of Public Works will suffice as meeting the charter requirement for a traffic study relative to a traffic ordinance. Is that correct in my understanding? So I know this going forward?
I hate to set any kind of precedent, one way or the other. I think in this particular instance, I think what he did was sufficient, given the factual scenario. We are talking about a stop sign as opposed to putting a traffic light on Oaklawn Avenue or Pontiac Avenue or something like that, which I would say requires a much more comprehensive type of study. My understanding is that the administration feels that this is a matter of urgency. As I said, the director gave an opinion at the last meeting. So in these limited circumstances, I don't see the need for a written comprehensive traffic study. I certainly don't want to set a precedent. You're right, the charter is pretty clear. We're supposed to have this 60 days within which to provide a traffic study. That's subject to interpretation. It doesn't say oral or written. So I just want to make it clear that, again, I don't want to set a precedent here, but I think in these narrow circumstances, I think we're covered by what was done thus far.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Thanks. Come back. We will reconvene at this time. And Director Moretti.
Council President, after speaking with the attorneys, we think the best tack to take at this point would be requesting the four-way stop to be continued for 2 months. That would give the traffic engineer time to work with possibly an outside consultant. I'm not sure who exactly would be coming up with the design of that intersection. But what, it may not be successful, it may be successful, it might be doable. Requiring that amount of time. In the meantime, and what it does, it frankly, doesn't break precedent, and I concur with the council and the council president about the traffic study, and I think it would satisfy that concern. And in the meantime, to just advise the council and the public that the mayor, in consultation with the command staff and the colonel, do believe that situation, that physical situation there at that intersection is of public concern, where it deems a requirement for the mayor to issue an executive order, which he'll put in place tomorrow.
Thank you, Director Moretti. To Solicitor Verdecchia, you concur, correct?
The course of my comments that I was under the impression that the administration considered this to be an emergency type or very urgent situation involving public health and safety.
All right, so given the information just provided, then it would seem that it would behoove us to continue this ordinance 60 days, so to the April council meeting, so that at that time we'd have a traffic study and we could perhaps codify this ordinance. And in the meantime, the mayor can issue the executive order. Okay, right. So at this time, clerk, can you tell me, was there a motion to approve?
Yes, there was.
Okay. At this time, I'd ask the motion to approve be withdrawn and a motion to continue 2 months. If the person who did the motion to approve is so inclined, understand that if it fails, it fails.
The motion was made by Councilman Wall.
Would you like me to withdraw?
Mhm. Correct. And we have a motion to continue this to the
Motion to
April.
motion to continue for 2 months?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Yes.
Councilman Donegan.
Yes.
Councilman Campopiano.
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas.
Yes.
You lied. Councilman Wall.
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas. Council President Marino.
Yes. And Council Vice President?
The next order of business is resolution proposing amendment to section 4.02 of the Cranston Home Rule Charter and directing of the Secretary of State to place on the ballot the following as a referendum question, Chapter 4, Department of Records, Section 4.02, Judge of Probate. This is sponsored by Council President Marino as amended on February 15, 2024, and referred out of the Ordinance Committee on February 15, 2024. I urge passage.
At this time, thank you, Council Vice President Vargas. I would, in speaking with Director Lima, with our registrar and the clerk, I'd like to make an amendment relative to this resolution on line 62, section 3, and remove the language on line 62 that begins that the city clerk cause the proposed amendments to be advertised 4 times, continuing on line 63, during the 30 days prior to the date of the election. Have that removed and instead have it read that the registrar shall advertise in compliance with Title 17 of the Rhode Island General Laws. make that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campopiano.
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas.
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. Now that the resolution has been amended, is there a motion to approve as amended?
Motion to approve as amended?
Second.
Any discussion? Councilwoman Renzulli.
Thank you, Madam President. My comment will be the same on the following two resolutions, that I am not in favor of this. I just believe that as the second largest city in the state, we have plenty of qualified attorneys to either be a probate judge or a solicitor. And I appreciate that we have homegrown solicitors and judges who understand and are part of our community. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councilman Paplaskas.
Thank you, Madam President. I was going to mention what Councilwoman Renzulli just said, but I will also not be in support of these tonight to stay consistent with what I've said at past meetings and charter review committee meetings in the past, so I will not be in support of either of these. Thank you.
Any other members wish to be heard? No? Okay. Relative to this resolution, I think this is an improvement, and we give it to the voters ultimately to decide relative to this charter amendment. Many other sister cities and towns have this similar ability. Myself, I know of lawyers who live in one town and serve in another, and in particular, the area of probate law. The pool of lawyers that practice for a large number of years and a large number of their practice, a large portion of their practice, that is not as many as one might think. And I would like to have a broader potential of candidates available to us. At this time, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
No.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Councilman Campopiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
No.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes.
Right, motion passes. On to the next item is resolutions, proposed amendments to section 8.01 of the Cranston Home Rule Charter, and directing Secretary of State to place on the ballot the following as a referendum question: Department of Law, sponsored by Council President Marino, as amended on February 15th. This is referred out of Ordinance Committee meeting on February 15, 2024, and I urge passage.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Similar to the other resolution, in this resolution, I would like a motion to amend line 58, Section 3, to remove the language that the city clerk caused the proposed amendments to be advertised 4 times during the 30 days prior to the date of the election.
So moved.
And,
Sorry.
That's okay. And instead substituted with the registrar shall advertise in compliance with Title 17 of the Rhode Island General Laws.
So moved.
Any discussion? Okay. I just like to say this charter amendment as well. This allows a broader pool of candidates relative to the position, and again, is similar to what other cities and towns are doing. Okay. And clerk, if you may, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
No.
Councilman Donegan.
Yes.
Councilman Campopiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
No.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas. Did you say yes? Sorry. Council President Marino.
Yes. Next, we have public comment for undocketed items. If there's anyone in chambers or online who wishes to be heard on any matter that is undocketed, please state your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments limited to 4 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Diana Gordon. I live at 85 Brigg Street in Cranston, that's senior housing. Good evening, City Council, thanks for my opportunity to speak to you. My name is Diana Gordon. I have some things to say that might be disconcerting to some. I have always believed that our government does what is fair and good for the people. That's our laws are just. But now that I get older, some things just don't seem to make much sense. 19 years ago, I started the Central Cranston Crime Watch in the Auburn area. It was the largest crime watch in the second largest city in Rhode Island. Crime was starting at an alarming rate, and I discovered why. There were 6 halfway houses for early release prisoners within a 10-block radius of my home and business. There were no rules for them and a lot of turmoil. Now our government is placing drug abusers in senior housing. Some of the seniors in the complex have told me that they are afraid. They told me not to talk with anyone or let them in my apartment. I told you this at the last council meeting. Now I am targeted for harassment. My apartment is constantly being broken into. My cat now lives under my bed, and my possessions are being broken or stolen. When I have called the police or the housing authority, nothing has been done to stop this. A resident living in the complex told me about a metal piece that attaches to the door that could prevent credit cards from being used to open the door lock. Why didn't the housing authority tell me about this? They knew about my plight for 3 months. And why did it take them 6 days to put one up after I asked for it? I was told that they would have to order one. Lowe's is not very far away. I have tried to start a crime watch. I believe these people would stop the harassment if I did. Several businesses are interested. When I returned, they were not responsive. What happened? I do have one now, I hope. When I was in Johnston, I stopped at the local police station looking to get some Crime Watch pamphlets. They told me that no one does crime watches anymore, but the National Sheriff's Association still does, and so does Captain Dutra of the Cranston Police as well. In the past months, I have spoken with Christopher, our councilman, I can't pronounce the last name, about the problem in housing. He backed away. I also spoke with Paul J. McCauley, Deputy Chief of Staff for the Cranston Mayor. He too backed away. I did not return my calls. So did Captain Dutra. Why did they leave us in harm's way? Why do they not care about the elderly and the handicapped? My suggestions that they make provisions for drug abusers to be housed separately. This could be implemented, although it would take time. It really needs to be done. I was a regular at the city council years ago. I even ran for the position. I guess I learned too much. I learned that government is not for the people, by the people, but for some people, by some people. I learned about power and money. I believed our politicians were doing what is best for the constituents, and some are, but some seem that they are not. I hope I am wrong. I exposed the halfway houses in Auburn. Look up Diana Gordon Crime Watch, Cranston, Rhode Island. In North Carolina, I exposed the city parking garages that were not handicapped accessible. Look up Citizens Times, October 15th, 2023. There's 6 pages. 3, and now here in Rhode Island, I am exposing the drug abusers in the housing for the elderly who sit in the building entrance many times drunk and stoned and threatening to break again into my apartment. I think they might be tonight. Even with surveillance, cameras are supposedly on and working. Council, I ask your help again. Speak to the housing authority, get them to stop the activity. Contact your friends in the legislature, get this problem resolved, change the laws. Would you want your mother, father, aunt, or friend, family members to be placed in these apartments in this situation? It is frightening. We need a place for our latter years. Make me believe in our system again. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Susan Blake. I live at 173 Grand Avenue in Cranston. I'd like to thank you for your time here tonight and for allowing me for a few minutes to speak with you. I would like to ask the City Council to closely monitor activity at the Budlong Pool site. I would like to ask the City Council to closely monitor the activity at the Budlong Pool site. This relates to the Pecasset River, Riverview Terrace, and Blackamore Pond floodplain restoration area, which sits clearly marked at the southern end of the Budlong Pool campus at Myrtle and Davis Avenues. The overflow stream from Blackamore Pond runs parallel to the pool, passes the floodplain, and merges with the Pecasset River at the exact location of the Riverview Terrace apartments that were inundated with river water twice within the last few months. This is why I'm asking for your help. When the pool was recently being pumped out, unfiltered, and into that overflow stream, my immediate concerns were for the effects of sudden volume increase of hundreds of thousands of gallons of water flowing down to the Riverview Apartments flood site. This would not be considered remediation. This would be considered aggravation of an existing active situation. It's counterintuitive to finding solutions to the flooding issues and fixing it. The Public Works Acting Director was on site that day, so I asked him if the situation downriver had even been given any consideration, and he said no. I asked why the drain in the pool wasn't being used, and he said he was told that was the way it was always emptied into the stream. Why? Who is overseeing activities involving the sensitive wetlands and the floodplain? It isn't Mr. Mariano from Weston and Sampson, because he was also there and said nothing. And every member of the administration who was also there at that pre-bid meeting seemed unfazed by the pumping. And yet, this was one of the mayor's key gripes about the old pool when it was in operation in the summertime. He cited overflow from the water, overflow water from the pump house periodically producing brief flow into that same stream. He said that was a DEM violation. Well, how is this not a DEM violation? In the minds of those responsible for the decision to pump hundreds of thousands of gallons of stagnant, unfiltered, slimy water directly into the stream. We're always being told, if you see something, say something. So I called and reported what I was seeing to DEM. When they called me back a short time later, I was told that they had contacted the city with the directions to, quote, stop or face stiff fines, unquote. And the pumping stopped shortly after the city got the call. In a recent article in the Providence Journal, the administration contended that there was nothing wrong with what they were doing. And I feel very strongly that there needs to be a strict oversight on this property as it goes into the next phase of construction. There is a clear lack of objective leadership. It's starkly evident that there is a void in the understanding of the big picture, the cause and effect of our actions on the environment and the flooding of residents' homes. And until the problem with the flooding at Riverview Terrace is resolved, the city should not be adding to the problem. Thank you.
My name is Dante Marinaro. I am from 132 Corson Avenue, Unit 3, Riverview Terrace. Can you hear me better now?
I think
It's on.
it's okay. I think that these, yep, yeah, so the steno and everyone can hear you. Thank you.
Better.
And if the green light's on, you're good to
Yeah.
go. You got it. Okay, thanks.
Dante Marinaro, 132 Corson Avenue, Unit 3. I'm here regarding the flood at the Riverview Terrace. We have been for the past 2-3 weeks. The remediation company finished the work removing all the damaged areas of every unit on the lower level. I have pictures here that can show you that you can go through the whole building because everything has been opened up and ready for the for the restoration. We need some help from the city. This thing needs to be pushed. We have 16 families. 4 of them are the only ones that have been able to live somewhere else. The rest are renting, living in a hotel, and they are already running out of money. This is a very, very dire situation and we need your help. We cannot, I am sick and tired of listening, go here, go there, do this, do that. I haven't been able to do anything because until FEMA, or rather, the disaster is declared, FEMA doesn't pay any attention, SBA doesn't pay any attention, and we are here sitting and waiting for nothing. Thank you.
Tom, is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to be heard?
Just a reminder to the public, if they need to raise their hand, use the raise hand function in Zoom. There is no public comment.
Thank you, Tom. And Mr. Marinaro, if we could, you're all set, Mr. Marinaro, thank you for speaking, but just for procedural purposes, if we can entertain a motion to accept these into the record.
Motion to accept those photographs into record.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Yes.
Councilman Donegan. Councilman Campopiano.
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas.
Yes.
Councilman Wall.
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas. Council President Marino.
Yes. Next this evening, we have election appointment of city officials. We have the appointment of Ivy Swinsky to the Zoning Board of Review, replacing Paula McFarland for the term expiring July 28, 2024. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Yes.
Councilman Donegan. Councilman Campopiano.
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas.
Yes.
Councilman Wall.
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas.
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. And welcome, Ms. Swinsky, to the zoning board. Thank you.
You didn't think you were going to have to wait 2 hours for that, did you?
Next this evening, we already did the report from the tax assessor, so moving on to executive communications, beginning with the legal expense analysis report, which has been provided. Does anyone have any comments, questions relative to the report? Solicitor Malay, I just have a question relative to the law firm of Womble, Bond, Dickinson, LLP. It notes the legal matter there and going back from December 21 to February 2023. Can you just inform me as to, is that a lobbying hire? Is that a pending legal matter? Or just wondering what that was for?
Certainly, Council President, that bill, Womble, Bond, and Dickerson, excuse me, was the city, under the past administration, engaged in a lawsuit at the behest of the League of Cities and Towns. That firm was engaged by multiple cities, approximately 19 of the cities and towns across the state, to challenge a state law that was passed in regards to one of the evergreen contracts, general laws. Mayor Hopkins and the administration and myself eventually discussed the merits of being involved in that lawsuit any further. And as such, we disengaged from the retainer agreement with that firm. And we received a subsequent bill for work that had been done in the past and had been prepared by that firm. That was a final bill that was tallied up. So that is what that is. And we are no longer engaged in that litigation as a plaintiff.
Okay, thank you. So that's why it is as high as it is. That's a final bill for all those years of legal services. Okay. And a final bill. Thank you. Anybody else? Nope. Councilwoman Renzulli.
Thank you, Madam President. Solicitor, I'm just wondering, why do we have Solicitor Marcella and an outside attorney billing for Natick Solar LLC versus the city?
Councilwoman, there are multiple facets to that litigation. That's Solicitor Marcella has been handling some of the planning litigation that's gone through because he's familiar with the steps that have been taken by the different committees in the city. And then we have outside legal counsel because it's also involved in Superior Court, and it's not something that Mr. Marcella could handle on his own.
And do we anticipate that wrapping up soon? I don't know if that's a question you can answer, but.
Right now, it's at the appeal stage. So right now, that litigation is kind of stalled until it makes its way. Whether it makes its way to the Supreme Court or not, I don't know what will happen. But right now, it is still in Superior Court hands, but I believe it's making its way to the Supreme Court.
Okay, thank you. And also, Council President Marino mentioned last time having more matters included on this than we usually see. Is every legal matter listed here?
Everything that I have through my office is on that updated list that my assistant has prepared.
Thank you, Solicitor.
Thank you.
Just to that point, just for clarification, the Finance Committee meeting, there'll be discussion on the legal expense report because there are two firms in particular that I have been informed of that have done work for the city, and I have not seen a bill from them. So we'll talk at Finance Committee about that.
That is
Yep.
all the bills that that have come through the law department is listed on that form.
Right, and in Finance Committee, we've discussed whether or not there were services to other departments that somehow didn't get on that bill. So, and I again, we'll talk about it further in Finance Committee, but I have actual documentation that there are other firms that have been hired by the city of Cranston that I'm not seeing on there. So,
No,
could
there
be
are
nominal bills, but
I'll be happy to clarify. There's some work that's being done by Rossi law offices that is done in the collection process, so that does not come through my office. And any bond work that is being done on behalf of the city that also does not come through the law department. It's paid out of the bonds.
that's correct. But I actually know of at least one other that deals with claims, which should be within your department. So again, I'm going to assume, it's just
Every-
innocent, error, or who knows, maybe a bill wasn't submitted yet, but
Those are
I
the-
just want to be clear, there needs to be further conversation about it.
And I'll say it like this, I'll be clear. Every bill that I've received for services that's been paid out is listed on that report, and there's nothing pending that I am aware of right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next this evening, we have on the agenda, I'm sorry, Councilman Ferry.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point. I'm not an accountant, and I usually am pretty good looking at bills and numbers and things that add up, but I still feel today that report is very confusing. And that we need to really look into coming up with a system that's more understandable, more of a checks and balances type of a thing, where we know the invoices, when they came in, when they were paid, because I still find that report very confusing. Just wanted to make a comment. Thank you.
Next this evening, we have from Planning Director Pizzulo, a status report on the comprehensive plan. I do not see Director Pizzulo here this evening. Does the administration have anything to add relative to that subject? No, okay, I can represent, just as everyone else is aware, that they did in fact have a public workshop that was well attended. I had a conflicting matter that evening. I know some council members here were in attendance that evening. I believe Councilman Ferry and Councilman Wall. I don't know if anyone else was in attendance that evening. So thank you for going and participating, and we look forward to the next steps from there. But the Plan Commission has that on a tight track, a tight schedule. If people are interested in knowing where it stands, then I welcome them to attend, whether on Zoom or in person, those meetings, which will lay out the trajectory when it's on the agenda as they're working with the consultant. Right. Next up this evening, under my communications, an update from the administration regarding the status of the city's participation in the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank's Community Septic System Loan Program. Director Moretti, I understand Council Vice President Vargas had these matters in committee as well. And again, I had my son had an open house at a school that I was attending that evening. And I did listen to the meeting. I know also that the application has been submitted, and I understand you're waiting for the Infrastructure Bank to hold their monthly meeting relative to the approval of the application. Is that correct?
Yes, Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank Board meeting, I believe is tomorrow night, but I know this week they anticipate it being approved. And at that point, just becoming operational. It seems like a simple process to work in conjunction with Rhode Island Housing, who does a lot of the administration of it. So we expect to have that up and running in March sometime.
And just so, I think I communicated it, but I'll keep it on the agenda, both Public Works and here, because the minute we get the green light that this program is up, ready to rock and roll for people to apply, then it gets taken off, because we don't want it to fall into no man's land.
And compliments to you. You first initiated this idea many months ago. Thank you, Council President.
And thank you to the administration for fulfilling the program. Next up this evening is a discussion on flooding events from September up to the current time throughout the city, the different flooding events that occurred both with the December and January events in addition to the September. The status of the FEMA, state and other assistance and remediation and mitigation efforts. I know that the mayor had the informational and resource program at the senior center. And myself, I attended that. I think I saw the council members there as well in attendance, Councilman Ferry and Renzulli, Campopiano, Poplawskis at that time. And there were representatives from the different organizations to provide assistance relative to the September flooding. And my understanding of how this process works is that in order for us as a city to receive the FEMA funding, the federal government has to declare it to be a disaster and emergency, and that declaration comes based on the state submission to the federal government, and the state's submission is based on the cities and towns' contributions to that, because they quantify the amount of damage to determine if it meets a threshold for the declaration. Is that right?
100% correct.
If you can maybe give us an update, like where we are in that process. that'd be great.
Elaborate just a bit.
Thanks.
Absolutely correct. At that workshop, the resources there were from 6 agencies, the SBA, FEMA, Rhode Island Emergency Management, Rhode Island DEM, Rhode Island Commerce, and also who was there was the from the USDA, the National Resource Conservation Service. Interesting. I just want to point that organization out. That's the organization that has received funding from the from Congress to allow that agency to come in and offer to purchase homes along the flood zone. or various residences. And they're scheduled to get their own internal approvals accomplished by the end of the first quarter of this year. And they're anticipating rolling out that program sometime this summer. I'm not sure, again, it's their agency, it's their program. But that process for offering to take houses, again, residences, I'm sorry, should be taking effect, let me say this year, but certainly this summer is what I was told by the representative in this region. So that was I just want to note that those people, these agencies were there, certainly, as you mentioned, for the September storm, but also to provide information for those people who were victims of the December and January storms, if and when the federal government will be, the president would be declaring an emergency declaration. So that brings us up to speed with where we are now. Speaking with Director Emergency, Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency Director Pappas last week, they are submitting 2 applications, if you will, or requests that actually process-wise would go from the governor to, as the council president mentions, they gather all the assessments, the damage assessments of all the communities, submits them. The governor will get that submitted to FEMA, I guess through REMA to FEMA. FEMA getting their stamp of approval would go on the president's desk. And if that happens, then there would be funds available to, it could be cities and towns or the municipalities, but in this case, it's gearing up that it would be also for residences. So right now with the December storm, REMA is kind of finalizing the paperwork for the submission and anticipated in the very near term. They're not giving exact dates, but very near term for the governor's submission to FEMA and then the president. It could take a couple of months to get an answer back in that process. But Mr. Pappas felt pretty confident that submission would take effect. Not being able for the municipalities to take advantage of it, but more so for the residences. As to the January storms, pardon me, I think they're packaging, there were 2 storms kind of back to back within 2 or 3 days. I forgot the dates, the 10th and 13th or whatever they were, I forget exactly. But they are, they're a bit more behind on that, than taking care of December. Now they're in the process of beginning assembling that information, and they anticipate, the governor will be anticipating that submission after. So that could take a little longer from where we are now, but we have to stay tuned. But it looks as if, though albeit delayed, I shouldn't say delayed, not as timely as some people would wish, just like the September storm. We recently got the aid. Hopefully they're gearing up as if we're going to be receiving some. So we're optimistic that there would be some resources coming to the state, in particular the city of Cranston, over the next few months.
Thank you very much. I had another element of this, the remediation and the mitigation efforts. And what I mean by that is, what efforts are we making as a city to prevent as best we can and be more prepared for these events in the future? Because, back in the prior flood around 2010, it was the once in 100-year storm, but we're finding that's clearly not the case. And I know for myself, I have concerns as to what the spring is going to drop upon us, because it's not only been unprecedented that we've had this type of storm event in such close proximity, but it's also unprecedented that it's occurred in the winter months. And when I mentioned the remediation and the, preparedness for this, it's not just relative to the urban setting of, sewer pipes and drainage on city and state roads, but it's also relative to the streams and wetlands that are impacted by numerous cities and towns that traverse through different municipalities. And I know that we, as a council, supported the initiative of joining the Municipal Resiliency Program through the Infrastructure Bank, and the mayor and his administration has participated in that. And there are tools available within that program. And frankly, the point of the program is long-term preparation. So if you can maybe give some enlightenment as to what steps we're taking relative to that.
Yeah, and to your point with that resiliency plan, we are, Cranston now qualified and participating in those programs with the grant writer, our EMA, attentive to these opportunities. I'll say that generally. I think one of the things one of what we've done with this kind of, we had two differentiation. The September storm seemed to be the drainage flooding issues. It seemed as if the January storms were, December and January were flooding issues from the rivers, from the two rivers, the Patuxent and the Pecasset. The one thing I pointed to was actually Chief Ryan with the second rainstorm, anticipating it, seeing the way the rivers were projected to crest. It was give advance notice to the residences that typically would be affected. That the fire department went out to those facilities and homes and were advising people of the anticipated flooding and the actions that would be taking place. Further to that, more strategically, I would need to, go back and regroup with the departments.
Sure. Is there a point person within the Department of Public Works or whatever department is appropriate relative to the long-term remediation and mitigation efforts?
Right now, it's the fire chief as the EMS director. He's a quarterback. It would be acting at this point because of very limited staff, acting director Matus from the Public Works end, because we're down a couple of positions.
All right. I know Council Vice President Vargas has on the Public Works agenda for this coming month. We'll maybe have some further discussion along those lines. I know there are different tools and planning available that we really need to move on now because it's going to take a long time for those things to be implemented, and this is going to be a long-term problem.
We're developing actually the capital budget. We're assessing how best to begin the long-term planning for drainage. I could tell you that has begun also, that thought process.
Okay, thank you. All right. And lastly, an update on the status of the audit. If we could have an update as to where that currently stands.
Mr. Zadelis, I'm not sure if he's in the building. Is he on? He wasn't on before. Mr. Zadelis said he would be here tonight. I had a conversation with him. He was to confirm with the auditors that they're squared away. He did indicate that there was one recently, the last couple of days, that the auditors responded back to him with a volley requesting some information having to do with the single audit. But I wanted to hear more of a clear, concise, and clear, concise answer as to where we are, but he's not here. He was to confirm that with the auditor. There's a message that he sent me an email a little while ago saying that he's waiting for a return call from the auditors, but he was saying he doesn't believe there's anything affecting the annual, used to be called the CAFR. I forget what it's exactly called now, but.
Is the current deadline still the end of the month?
Yes.
Which is what, February?
It's close, yes,
Okay.
3 days away.
And so you'll be talking with him tomorrow, and if need be, you'll be asking for an extension. And I would ask that whatever you do, whatever the outcome, if you could please email Councilman Donegan as the finance chair, and he can disseminate from there. Thank you.
Yeah, will do.
Any questions from council members? No? Okay. Great. At this time, we'll move on to introduction of new business. I will ask that we take the new business as a block to refer them to their respective committees.
Motion to take new business as a block?
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campobiano, Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes, and now I'd entertain a motion to move the block to their respective committees.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campopiano, Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes, and before we go into executive session, I just want to jump down to the last item, the informational items of the reappointments to the Board of Contract and Purchasing for the two respective members. Does anyone have any discussion? There's no vote on that. No discussion on that. And now at this time, we'll take a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second. Third.
Any discussion? No discussion. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campopiano, Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes.
Councilman Ferry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Yes.
Councilman Donegan. Councilman Campopiano. Councilman Paplaskas. Councilman Wall.
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes, and there were, for the record, no votes taken in executive session. At this time, entertain a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, ayes have it. And next, motion to
To approve.
adjourn. It's not that.
Motion to adjourn.
late.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Good night.